You wake up at 3 a.m., not because of noise, not because of a bad dream, because your brain starts running the numbers again. How much do I have saved? How much do I actually need? How many good earning years are left? And the answer doesn't feel like a spreadsheet. It feels like a weight in your chest. If you're 45, 48, 52, it doesn't really matter. The panic is the same. You're not broke. You have something. You've done some things right. But deep down you know, it's not enough. Not yet. And here's the strangest part. From the outside, your life looks normal. Maybe even successful. Your friends look calm. They travel. They upgrade. They act like everything is fine. But you can feel it now. A lot of people aren't fine. They're just better at ignoring the clock. Because time moves differently when you're young. When you're 25, 10 years feels infinite. You can waste a year and it barely registers. But after 45, a decade disappears fast. And retirement stops being a distant concept. It becomes a date on the horizon you can actually see. Ready or not. Now, I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because the truth is simpler than people think. It's not over. Not even close. But the window for casual is closing. This is the stage where small decisions finally start to matter. Not because you're doomed, but because compounding needs time, and time is now the scarce resource. So, here's what we're doing today. No hype, no motivational speech, no get rich quick. Just a plan that works when time is tight. 5 moves. Make them in the next 90 days. Not next year, not when things calm down. 90 days. Will it fix everything overnight? No, but it can fix enough. Enough to regain control. Enough to build a retirement with dignity. Enough to sleep again. And if you do nothing, you already know what happens. Not because life is cruel, but because math doesn't negotiate. Before we go further, let me ask you something. Write in the comments where you're watching from and how old you are. Not for me, for you. There's something grounding about seeing your age written in your own words before you hear what comes next. All right, let's get to work. Here's why 45 hits differently. At 25, retirement is fiction. At 35, you're busy. Career, bills, family, pressure. And everyone tells themselves the same line. I'll save more when I make more. Sometimes that happens. Often it doesn't. Because lifestyle expands, and the years quietly pass. But at 45, something shifts. You see time more clearly. You notice your parents dealing with medical costs and limited income. You see people your age who look fine, but have no margin. You look at your own numbers and realize you can't wing it anymore. And yes, starting at 25 would have been easier. You would have had decades of compounding. But we're not here to mourn the past. We're here to control what happens next. So, move number 1 is the most uncomfortable and the most powerful. Get ruthlessly honest about your spending and cut it hard. Not try to spend less, not be more careful, a real cut, a structural change. Because at 45 plus, saving 5% or even 10% is usually not enough anymore. Not if you want options later. The goal is to create serious surplus, the kind that compounds. And the only way to do that quickly is to stop paying for comfort you don't even enjoy. We'll make this practical, we'll make it measurable, And we'll do it in a way you can actually live with. Let's break down Move 1. Move number 1. Get ruthlessly honest about your spending and cut it hard. Not try to spend less, not be more mindful. A real cut, a structural change. Because at 45 plus, saving 5%, even 10%, usually isn't enough anymore. Not if you want real options later. You need surplus, the kind that compounds. And the fastest way to create surplus isn't a clever investment. It's removing the quiet spending that has crept into your life and made your lifestyle heavier than it needs to be. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people can afford to save more. They just don't want to face what it requires. It requires saying no to upgrades. It requires choosing boring on purpose. So I'm going to make this measurable. For the next 90 days, your target is a 30% cut. Not forever, not for the rest of your life. 90 days. Long enough to reset your baseline. Long enough to build momentum. Long enough to prove to yourself you're not trapped. And before you argue with me, listen. A cut like this feels intense because you've been spending on autopilot for years. Not because you're irresponsible. Because life is busy and convenience is everywhere. But convenience has a cost. Not just the cost today, the cost compounded for 20 years. So what does a real cut actually look like? It looks like postponing new. No new car because you feel like you deserve it. Drive what you already own. Maintain it. Keep it alive. If it dies, you replace it with something used and reliable, and you pay cash if you can. It looks like food becoming simple again. More cooking, more repetition. Less, I'll just grab something. Not because you're punishing yourself, because your future freedom is worth more than a forgettable meal. It looks like cancelling anything you don't actively value. Subscriptions you forgot you had. Memberships you don't use. Apps, streaming, delivery, small monthly charges that add up to real money over a year. Here's a rule. If you wouldn't buy it again today, cancel it today. And yes, it might feel like you're missing out. That's normal. Because when you change your spending structure, your brain will protest. It will call it deprivation. It will say you're falling behind. But you're not falling behind. You're getting lighter. Now let's do the part most people never do, the math. Every dollar you spend today is not just a dollar. It's a dollar that doesn't get to compound for you. That weekly restaurant habit, the "it's only $100 habit, over years becomes an amount your future self would desperately want back. That car payment you barely notice each month becomes years of freedom you traded away quietly. At 45 plus, the trade becomes obvious. Comfort now versus control later. And most people have been choosing comfort for a long time, not because they're bad, but because no one forces them to see the long-term bill. So, here's the calm wealth version of this move. Practical, not dramatic. I want you to do 3 things this week. First, calculate your baseline. Look at the last 30 days and total what you spent. Everything. Housing, food, car, insurance, subscriptions, random purchases, convenience. Second, identify the big 3 leaks. Not the tiny ones, the big ones. The category where you spend money and barely remember what you got. For most people, it's some combination of food outside the home car costs, lifestyle subscriptions, and convenience impulse shopping, expensive treat yourself habits. Third, pick one cut you can enforce immediately. Not try, enforce. Cancel the subscriptions today. Reduce dining out to 0 for 30 days. Pause online shopping completely for a month. Sell one expensive habit and replace it with a boring version. And here's what will happen if you do this seriously. The first month will feel strange. You'll feel restricted. You'll watch other people spend freely and you'll feel annoyed. Then, somewhere around month 2 or 3, something flips. You adapt. Humans adapt faster than they think. You realize you weren't spending for happiness. You were spending from habit and from comparison. And once the number in your savings account starts moving consistently, you get something most people don't have at 45. Momentum. That's the whole point. Not to live small forever, to build a surplus big enough that your future isn't fragile. Because once you have surplus, you can do the next moves. You can take advantage of tax shelters. You can invest consistently. You can clean up debt. Without surplus, every plan is fantasy. So that's move number 1. Cut hard for 90 days. Create surplus. Build momentum. Now, move number 2 is non-negotiable, and it's where most people underuse the best tools they have. Move number 2. Max out every tax-advantaged account you can access. Move number 2. Max out every tax-advantaged account you can access. And I'm going to be blunt here. This is non-negotiable. Because if you're 45 plus, the game is no longer save when you feel like it. The game is use every advantage that legally lets your money grow faster. These accounts aren't complicated. They're just ignored. A workplace plan like a 401k or equivalent, an IRA if you qualify, an HSA if you have access to one, these are not nice to have. They are the engine room. And yes, the numbers can feel intimidating. That's the point. If you're behind, you don't get to move slowly. Now, let's start with the easiest win, the employer match. If your employer matches contributions and you're not putting in enough to get the full match, you're turning down free money. Not maybe free, not kind of, free. It's like refusing a raise because you're trying to be cautious. Calm wealth rule. Take free money every time. Then you build from there. Here's the way I want you to think about it. You don't save whatever is left. You decide what your future costs and you pay it first. Because retirement is not a mood, it's a bill. So what do you do if you look at the max and think, I can't afford that? You have 2 levers, only 2. You either spend less or you earn more, preferably both. That's not harsh, that's reality. At 45 plus, excuses don't protect you from math. And I'm not saying you need perfection, I'm saying you need momentum. So here's the calm wealth version, practical. This week, you do 3 things. First, set the floor. Contribute enough to get the full employer match. If you're below that, fix it today, not next paycheck, today. Second, increase by 1%. Just 1%. If that feels easy, do 2%. The goal is to make progress without negotiating with your emotions every month. Third, automate it so you don't rely on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Automation is calm. And one more thing, this part matters psychologically. When you contribute through payroll, you don't feel the money leave. It never becomes lifestyle, it becomes structure. That's how you win. Now, I'm not going to sell you a fantasy. If you're truly behind, you will probably need to push harder than 1%. But you don't start by promising the perfect future. You start by building the habit of paying yourself first, every paycheck, without debate. Because once you've created surplus in Move 1, and you've redirected it into tax-advantaged accounts in Move 2, something important happens. You stop feeling like you're catching up. You start feeling like you're in control. And control is what calm wealth is actually about. All right, move number 3. This is where most people lose years because they try to be clever. Move number 3. Stop gambling. Build a simple, boring investing system you can stick with. At 45 plus, you don't have the luxury of big mistakes. You can't afford to lose 40 to 50% chasing a hot idea and then spend years trying to recover. You'll tell yourself you'll be disciplined next time. You won't. Because the problem isn't information, it's emotion. So the system has to be boring on purpose. Here's the core idea. You're not trying to be impressive. You're trying to be safe, consistent, and repeatable. For most people, that means this: a low-cost, broad index fund for stocks and a smaller stabilizer in bonds. That's it. No constant switching, no special opportunities. No portfolio that requires you to check the news every morning like it's your job, because it's not your job. And if it becomes your job, it usually becomes your stress. Calm wealth rule. If it requires daily attention, it's not a plan, it's a trap. Now, I'm going to say something that's unpopular but true. Almost everyone thinks they're the exception. They believe they can pick the winners. They believe they can time the exits. They believe they'll sell before it gets bad. But even professionals struggle to beat simple index funds consistently after fees. And you're not competing with amateurs. You're competing with teams, algorithms, and people who do this all day. So this is what we're doing instead. We're building an investing system that survives your mood swings. Here's the calm wealth setup. Put the majority into a low-cost stock index fund. Choose one from a reputable provider with very low fees. Set automatic contributions. And treat it like a monthly bill. Then add a small portion in a broad bond fund. Not because it's exciting, but because it reduces the chance that a bad year forces you into a bad decision. And once a year, you rebalance. Not once a week, not once a month, once a year. That's the whole strategy. Now, the most important part isn't the exact percentages. The most important part is the behavior. When the market drops, and it will, you do not panic sell. You keep contributing like a robot. When the market is booming and everyone is bragging, you do not chase. You keep contributing like a robot. This is not about predicting the future. It's about removing your ability to sabotage the plan. So here's your action step for this week. 1. Choose your simple funds. 2. Set your automatic contribution schedule. 3. Set a rule that you will not check your portfolio more than once a month. And 4. Write down one sentence that becomes your anchor in every storm. I don't need to be clever. I need to be consistent. Because consistency is what lets compounding do its job. All right, move number 4 is where we remove the biggest guaranteed enemy of wealth. Move number 4. Eliminate high-interest debt. All of it. If you're carrying credit card debt while trying to catch up on retirement, you're trying to build wealth while bleeding. It doesn't work. It can't work. High-interest debt is not just a number. It's a guaranteed negative return every single month. And at 45 plus, guaranteed losses are poison because you don't have decades to waste. So let's make this clear. If a credit card is charging you 18%, 22%, 29%, paying it off is an 18 to 29% return, guaranteed, risk-free, tax-free in the simplest sense that matters. You keep more of your own money. Show me another investment that gives you a guaranteed 22% return without volatility. You can't. So no, you do not invest instead while carrying high-interest debt. You're not being efficient, you're being optimistic. And optimism is expensive. Calm wealth rule. Remove guaranteed losses before chasing uncertain gains. Here's the plan. List every debt you have. Credit cards, personal loans, car loans, student loans, anything. Write down the interest rate next to each one. Then you do the simplest thing that works. Highest rate first. Every extra dollar goes to the highest rate until it's gone. Minimum payments on everything else. No cleverness, no negotiation. Scorched earth. And once the highest rate balance is zero, you move to the next. This isn't about being good, it's about being free. Because debt does something worse than charge interest. It steals options. When you're in debt, you can't save aggressively. You can't take career risks. You can't breathe when life hits you. Panic faster because you're already tight. And life will hit. That's not pessimism, that's adulthood. Now, there's one more uncomfortable point people ignore at this age. Housing. If you're 45 with a 30-year mortgage, you're signing up to pay it until you're 75. That might be normal on paper, but it's dangerous in real life. I'm not saying you must be mortgage-free by retirement at any cost. I'm saying you need a plan that doesn't require perfect conditions. If the payment is so big that retirement won't support it, you have two choices. You either pay it down faster or you reduce the housing cost. Again, not emotion, math. So, here's your action step for move number 4 this week. 1. Write the list of debts with interest rates. 2. Pick the highest rate and throw every extra dollar at it. 3. Stop creating new debt while you're paying old debt. And 4. If your housing cost is heavy, start planning now, not 5 years from now. Because the goal is not to look successful. The goal is to become harder to break. All right, move number 5 is where you stop guessing and start using real numbers. Move number 5. Calculate your actual retirement number, not a vague hope. Most people don't have a plan. They have a feeling. They know they need more than they have. They know retirement sounds expensive. They know they're behind. But they've never written down the number. So the brain fills the gap with anxiety. Calm wealth rule. Panic comes from unclear math. So we're going to replace the fear with a target. Here's the simplest starting point that works for most people. You need about 25 times your annual spending. If you want to spend $40,000 a year in retirement, you need about $1 million saved. If you want $60,000, you need about $1.5 million. It's not perfect, nothing is, but it's a solid framework because it's based on a simple idea. You can withdraw around 4% per year and have a good chance of not running out of money. Now, step 1 is not guessing. Step 1 is honesty. I want you to calculate what you actually spend in a year. Not what you wish you spent, not what you tell yourself you spend. Everything. Housing, food, transportation, insurance, healthcare, subscriptions, entertainment, travel, gifts. Every small habit that quietly became normal. Add it up. That's your annual spending. Then multiply by 25. That's your target number. Now look at what you have saved and look at the gap. That gap is not a reason to spiral. It's just information. And once you have information, you have options. If the gap feels too big, there are only 3 levers. 1. Save more aggressively, which is why we started with surplus. 2. Work a few years longer. Not ideal, but powerful. 3. Plan to spend less in retirement, often by simplifying housing, location, or lifestyle. Most people will use a combination, and that's fine. This is real life, not a fantasy plan. Now, before we close, I want to give you 3 stop doing this rules. Because even if you do the 5 moves, these 3 behaviors can destroy the whole thing. First, stop increasing lifestyle when income rises. A raise is not permission to upgrade your life. At 45 plus, a raise is a chance to upgrade your net worth. If you're living fine on your current income, keep living on it. Bank the difference. Second, stop buying new cars to feel successful. A car is transportation. It is not a trophy. And financing a depreciating asset while you're trying to catch up is financial sabotage. Third, stop waiting for the perfect time to start. The perfect time was years ago. The second best time is today. Because here's the truth that should calm you down. You still have time. If you're 45, you likely have around 20 years before a traditional retirement age. That's 240 months. 240 chances to do the boring things that work. And compounding is powerful even when you start late, if you stay consistent. It won't feel good at first. The first year feels like sacrifice. The first 2 or 3 years feel slow. And you'll be tempted to quit because progress doesn't feel dramatic. But somewhere around year 4 or 5, you will see real movement. Not motivation, evidence. And then the game changes. Because once the account gets big enough, the growth starts doing some of the work for you. That's the phase most people never reach. Not because it's impossible, but because they quit during the slow part. So, here's what I want you to do right now, before you click away and life distracts you. Do one thing today. 1. Log into your retirement account and increase your contribution, even by 1%. Or calculate your annual spending and multiply by 25. Or cancel 3 recurring charges you don't value. Just one action, today. Because most people will watch videos like this, feel something for 10 minutes, and change nothing. And then they'll wake up older and wonder what happened. Don't be that person. You can't change the past, but you can change what happens next. And if you want more calm wealth, no hype, no hot takes, no predictions, subscribe. We're building a community of people who make boring decisions now, so life gets calmer later. Now, let me tell you the part that actually matters. 45 is not too late, but it's too late to stay casual. If you're 45, you likely have around 20 years before a traditional retirement age. That's not a slogan. That's roughly 240 months. 240 chances to make the same boring decisions. And compounding still works, even if you start late, if you stop interrupting it. Here's what nobody explains clearly. The first few years feel pointless. You're cutting spending, saying no, watching other people enjoy life, and your accounts don't look impressive yet. It feels slow. It feels unfair. That's normal. The early phase is mostly you doing the work. Later, the account starts doing some of the work back. Somewhere around year 4 or 5, you'll look up and see evidence. Not hope, evidence. The number is finally moving in a way that changes how you breathe. And then, in the later years, compounding becomes visible. When your balance is large enough, a normal market year can create more growth than you can personally save. That's the moment you're building toward. But you only reach it if you stop quitting, stop restarting, and stop negotiating with yourself. So here's what I want you to do before life distracts you. Not 10 things. 3. In the next 24 hours. First, log into your retirement plan and increase your contribution. Even by 1%. Do it while your attention is sharp. Second, calculate your annual spending and multiply it by 25. Write that target down. You can't hit a goal you refuse to name. Third, find 3 recurring expenses you can cut, something that frees up even a few hundred a month, and redirect that money automatically. Do those 3 things, and you're ahead of most people your age. Because most people will watch a video like this, feel something for 10 minutes, and then change nothing. And nothing changes their future. You can't change what you did at 25. You can't buy back lost time. But you can decide what happens next. If you're serious about building calm wealth, without hype, without gambling, without constant stress, subscribe. That's what we do here. And before you go, write a comment with your age and city and one line. Behind, on track, catching up. Not for me, for you. Because the future is coming either way. The only question is whether you meet it prepared.